I've heard it said that the oldest and strongest human emotion is fear, and the oldest and strongest fear is the fear of the unknown. Speaking from my time playing the Midnight game, I can safely say this is true. None of us knew what had just happened to Carlton, nor did we want to know. Just looking at his gaunt face was enough to send chills down our spine, and the voices were still speaking in unison. 1 down, 4 left. 1 down, 4 left. 1 down, 4 left. They were chanting it over and over. I put my hand over my ears, trying to blot it out. Then my candle went out. I immediately tried to relight it when I felt a hand touch my arm. I glanced up instantly to find myself looking at Josie's face. It was covered in panic as she pointed to the door. I only just struck the mat. Guttural, feral groan of a man. The voices ceased chanting. "Interesting," said the fifth voice. "It would appear someone else is here, not a player of the Midnight game." There was a few seconds of silence, a click of a glass on the door. Benny, Greg, Josie, and I all looked at it. An empty bottle was rising slowly in the air, suspended by invisible hands that left pencil-thin markings in the dust. "Run," it was the fifth voice. Then the bottle lurched up in the air before violently dropping onto the floor. It shattered, glass sparkling in the moonlight. A feral scream followed instantly. I barely remember grabbing my candle and booking it out of the cell. Josie was the first out the door, and I trailed behind her. We both jointly pushed the wheelchair out of the way and landed on its side with a loud crash as part of it cracked. The glass shatters cracked under my shoes and that of my friends. Heavy footsteps were thundering down the hall towards us, with horrific screaming accompanying it. I struggled not to yell and scream in panic. Somehow none of my friends did either. Josie and Greg were sprinting down the hall in front of me, not daring to look back. I wanted to call out and beg to them, "Wait up!" but the heavy breathing next to my ear made me pause. I glanced over my shoulder to find Carlton's gaunt, pale face following me. His white hair contrasted against the darkness around us. A blank look was on his face, and his unlit candle was clasped to the front of his chest. He pushed past me without a glance, slamming against the wall as he seemed to glide down the hallway. My candle fell onto the ground, flame going out. I bent down to pick it up, relit it, and then heard something else fall onto the ground. Benny groaned in pain. I looked over and my heart dropped. Benny had tripped over the upended wheelchair, dropping his candle. Smoke drifted from the burnt, unlit wick. Benny's hand gritted against the broken glass as he lifted it up and reached for the black candle. Shards of glass were stuck in his palm, blood trailing down it. I grabbed the candle and Benny began to get to his feet. The thundering footsteps were almost on top of us. I was already rushing to help Benny onto his feet when the candle suddenly lurched out of his hand, spinning across the ground. Then it stopped, slowly lifted into the air. When it flew in a curve through the air, Benny was already on his feet and caught it. Already trying to strike a match, I stared with wide eyes as the footsteps began to round the corner at the very end of the hallway. "No," said one of the voices. "No, he is not supposed to." "Rules," said the fifth voice, "are to be followed, not bent." "But how can we win?" "By not resorting to cheating," the fifth voice hissed back. "Now players, do as I told you. Run." In the moonlight at the end of the hallway, a massive towering figure lurched into view, head a brush of hair. The feral scream became the howl of an animal. I raced forward, grabbed Benny by the arm, and began dragging him forward. He shook me off and then fell into step behind me. Behind us, the howling was getting closer. The hallway split into 3 different directions at the intersection, not including the one we were already in. I glanced at Benny and pointed my fingers to the right, then at him. Still running, we were so close, Benny didn't need to be told twice what to do. The instant we reached the intersection, he took the right, and I turned to follow him. I slipped on a bottle, almost falling on the ground before I could steady myself. Benny paused, watching with wide eyes, and turned, about to help me when I held up my free hand. The howling was almost on top of us. Without thinking, I began running in the opposite direction. I looked back once to see Benny watching me go with a pained expression before he ran to the other direction. Then his form was obscured by a hulking figure which howled at me. He chased me throughout the asylum, relentless in my pursuit. I don't know how I managed to evade him, ducking under broken doors that hung out of their frames limply. I swear, I could feel his hot breath on the back of my neck, but he never managed to grab me. I knew that if his hands wrapped around my neck, I'd be done for. After I took another corner, then ducked into an abandoned room, his screams grew distant. I kept running, ignoring the way my lungs screamed in protest as I tried to find somewhere to hide. I stopped when I pushed through a set of double doors and found myself in what had to have been the kitchen. Old pots and pans littered the floor, along with knives that were covered with dark rust, spatulas, large serving spoons, and other cooking utensils I couldn't name for the life of me. I began frantically looking around, trying to figure out where to hide. I opened one of the old fridges, then gagged at what I saw inside. It was the remains of a rat covered in fat, wriggling maggots. I slammed the door shut on instinct. There was a grunt from the distance, just outside the double doors, and then heavy footsteps. I scolded myself for having been so stupid. The heavy footsteps were getting closer, accompanied by grunting and deranged mumbles. I looked around and ran to one of the cupboards, opening it and shoving myself inside. The candle was my only illumination. As the footsteps got closer, I glanced down the edge of the cupboard door, opened just a crack so I could breathe. Light from the candle was spilling out of it. Without thinking, I blew out my candle and hutched in the cupboard, already digging into my pocket for the matches. Then the doors burst open and I froze. I could hear the deep, gruttle voice of the crazy man speaking incomprehensibly. The footsteps that plodded through the kitchen kicked aside anything in their path. A clutter of rust as something was broken apart. The slamming of a door. Discomfort crept into my body as I crouched inside the cupboard. My back ached. The footsteps continued to creep throughout the kitchen. Glass crunched close beside me. As I cupped a hand over my mouth to stifle my gasp, smoke drifted upward from the long, thin candle in my other hand. The footsteps came to a stop directly in front of me, and a shadow was standing in front of the cupboard door. The intelligible mumbling from directly in front of me carried a distinct tone of menace to it. Unhinged, I should say. When something shuffled, the shadow moved. Just under the crack, I could see the bare, filthy foot of a man with yellow, fungus-infected toenails. Tears began rolling down my face. I was gonna die here! Then the battering stopped, as did the howling. I listened closely as I heard the metallic squeak followed by a door slamming shut. The feet with yellow claw-like toenails shuffled away. I waited until I heard them growing faint. The intelligible mumbling faded with them. I pulled out my matches, lit one, and held my candle steady. As I put the flame to the wick, I breathed a sigh of relief when the burning flame was now on top of it, then blew out the match. Then slowly the cupboard door opened, coming to a stop when it was halfway from me. Dust on the inside of the door had been disturbed, leaving pencil-thin markings where the dust had been swept away. I waited with bated breath. The door shot forward and I winced. It didn't slam shut, however. It stopped just before it shut completely, in an inch from the cabinet. I jumped and dropped my candle when my phone buzzed in my pocket. I instantly grabbed my candle before the flame could go out, holding it close to my face, and I pulled out my phone. It was a text message from Josie. My friends and I had set up a group chat for easy contact. I wasn't relieved to see Josie's message, however. What she had sent me made my blood run cold. Guys, I'm in the basement, and I think I can hear something. I was the first to send a message back. Josie, get out of the basement now. I watched as the 3 small dots appeared in the text box before her reply came through. I can't. There's something upstairs blocking the door. I can hear one of the voices whispering from the top. I think it's singing. I gulped when I saw another message, this time unmistakably from Benny. Josie, I'll try to help you. Greg, Larry, are you guys with Carlton? Greg answered first. I thought he was with one of you guys. My heart skipped in my chest, then grimly sent another message. Guys, Carlton isn't with me. It wasn't any text box with small dots for a few seconds as this settled in. Just when I saw Benny begin typing, it happened. There was a sharp, scraping sound, like stones were being dragged along metallic ground. The asylum began to shake and lurch, not like an earthquake was happening beneath our feet. This was different. I felt like the asylum was moving. A voice spoke right next to my ear. They are stirring. Then Josie sent another message. Guys, something's wrong down here. Something's really wrong. I'm not alone. I'm scared. I can hear something screaming. I don't think it's human. Damn it, Benny. Why'd you convince us to play this stupid game? Benny was just beginning to answer when the shaking stopped. Outside the cupboard, a dull green light was oozing in through the crack. My phone buzzed and I checked the new message. It was from Greg. Guys, he began. I'm looking out the window and I don't think we're on Earth anymore.